Hi guys, and welcome to a Hector Lecture guide to the new Endsinger's Aria Extreme fight in Final Fantasy XIV. This guide's going to break down all of the major mechanics that you'll see throughout the fight. First off, the boss is going to use Elegeia Unforgotten. This hits for pretty heavy raid-wide damage, so mitigate and heal up before 2 planets are spawned. These will either be red or blue with a ring around them. If you get the blue ring planets, just as in normal mode, one of these will move slow and one of these will move fast. The planets will collide about a 90-degree clockwise from the slow planet. In this case, we can see that the one at B is moving slow and moves towards A, and when these collide, they provide a knockback. You may not have noticed, but when Elegeia went off, a head also spawned facing in a direction. At the same time that the planets collide, this head is going to cleave in a 180-degree angle, so make sure you're not anywhere on the same side as the head is facing. Immediately afterwards, the boss is going to cast Elegeia Unforgotten again, hit with that heavy raid-wide damage, and spawn the other type of planets. If you had blue first, this time you're going to get the red planets. These act just like normal mode. At the end they collide, but be aware there's also a head facing a direction. Make sure that you're not in front of that head while also dodging the planets. After this is Katasterismo. This spawns 8 towers in 2 columns. Players at the end of this need to be stood in the towers to prevent everybody in the party from taking heavy damage and a vuln stack. Before we can soak these towers, though, the boss will cast Grip of Despair and tether every tank and healer with a DPS. Simply stack up middle, and then have everybody run to their east and west, with tanks and healers going one side and DPS going the other. This will break the tower tethers and give you time to soak your towers. Hop into your towers, and while soaking them, be aware that the boss is casting Elenchos. This is going to be the same mechanic you've seen from normal mode, which either cleaves in the middle, which is seen by the boss having its mouth open and sucking in ether around it, in which case soak your towers on the side of the towers. Or if you had instead gotten the boss crying, this means that the boss is about to cleave on the sides, so soak your towers while in the middle. We're going to see Elenchos used throughout the fight, so keep your eyes peeled for when the boss is casting it. Telos is next, and this is just a standard raid-wide to mitigate and heal through. And then Hubris targets both of the top 2 aggro players with a heavy, hard-hitting tank buster. You need to make sure that both your first and second in aggro are tanks. So make sure that both tanks have tank stance on, and if one tank dies, they need to make sure they provoke so they're also still second in aggro. Be aware this also cleaves in a small radius around them, which is quite easy to see. We then get another Elegeia Unforgotten. Heal and mitigate through the raid-wide damage and deal with this exactly the same as before. At the end of this, though, the boss is going to start casting Aria and target both healers with a stack marker. Just spread out from each other into light parties and soak them as. Afterwards, the boss will now cast Fatalism. Both the planets that just were destroyed and another pair the exact same type are going to be brought back and are going to repeat their explosion. Start middle, dodge the first set you see respawning, and then immediately move opposite to the other side to dodge the set that's about to spawn as well. These can either be combos of red planets or combos of blue planets. As soon as this finishes, the boss will cast Elenchos, so dodge accordingly. Next up is Twinsong's Aporrhoia. For this, the boss spawns 5 heads, with the one in the middle having a very clear arrow. Immediately dodge opposite the way the arrow is pointing, and as Aria Unforgotten is cast, 2 of the heads on the outside are going to have donuts, and 2 will have point-blank AoEs. Dodge into whichever donut is not on the side the head is facing, because the head is going to cleave in that direction. Afterwards, this will always be the same. The head is going to rotate clockwise 90 degrees, and so is the pattern of donuts and AoEs. So you can simply just always rotate clockwise to deal with the next 2 combos. And again, one more time. To finish, the boss is now going to tether each of these heads and cast Theological Fatalism. While tethering them, they are either going to have 1, 2, or 3 rings. This ring tells you how many mechanics backwards the boss is about to rewind. What this means is that those heads that have 1 ring are going to do the mechanic they just did. Those with 2 rings are going to rewind back an extra step and do the one they did 2 ago. And finally, the head with 3 rings is going to rewind all the way back to the very first mechanic that it did. A simple way to remember this is if you stay put at the end of this, both the space you're on and the space opposite you, those heads will be safe if they have 1 or 3 rings. Any of the other heads will be safe if they've got 2 rings. Now, that's safe in terms of being a donut to stand in, but there's one more thing to worry about, the head in the middle. If the head in the middle has 1 ring, it's going to cleave right the way that it's already facing. If the head has 2 rings in the middle, it's going to rotate back to the counterclockwise one direction before cleaving that side. And if the head has 3 rings, it's going to rotate back 2 rotations counterclockwise and cleave back in that direction. Now look at the full pattern. Take your time to think where the safe spot will be. In this case, because the head is about to cleave over in the 4 direction, both of the donuts at A and D are unsafe. The only safe spot is B, and the entire party needs to head in that direction. As this is going off, both healers will be targeted with another of the Aria stacks, and the boss is going to cast an Elenchos. Dodge the Elenchos while also making sure that your light parties are separate to take the healer stacks together. You can have one group assigned to always be north, and the other group assigned to always be more south. There's another Hubris tank buster to deal with. Have your tanks mitigate appropriately. And the boss does a new mechanic, Despair Unforgotten. I recommend, as you see this cast, getting into a light spread in the middle, and you should have pre-assigned spread positions similar to this, with tanks and healers on cardinals or intercardinals, and DPS on the other. You're then going to get one of 3 mechanics. One of those possibilities is that everybody can get a spread marker. In this case, just everybody goes out all the way to the edge on their waymark. If you want to, for ease of healing, you can have your healer stay middle. There is room for one person in middle. Afterwards, go back middle, and you're going to get another mechanic. This time, either all tanks and healers are going to get targeted with a flare marker, while the DPS, one of them will have a stack, and 3 of them have these pink circle markers. Those are donut AoEs. When you see this combo, this just means that your tanks and healers are all going to go out at their spread position, while all the DPS stack do middle. While the second of the 3 mechanics go off, the boss is going to cast an Elenchos, so look at the boss to dodge this immediately after the second one. Finally, there's going to be one last combo for Despair Unforgotten. The final combo remaining is just the opposite of the second one that I showed, with flare markers being on every DPS player, meaning they need to spread out, while one tank or healer gets a stack marker and the other 3 tanks or healers get donuts. This is resolved just by having the DPS go out to their spread positions while tanks and healers stack do middle. Now, all 3 of those mechanics I showed you, the spreads, the flares and stack and donuts, and the inverse of that, are totally random what order they'll appear in, so you just need to remember which order they showed up in this time and adjust. Now where things get tricky. The boss is going to cast Theological Fatalism, and every player is either going to get 1, 2, or 3. This is going to work just like the heads did, and remember it always goes backwards. What this means is that those players with 1 ring are about to get the exact same mechanic they just got. The players with 2 rings need to remember back to what was the middle mechanic they got. They're going to get that. And finally, the players with 3 rings need to remember back to the very first mechanic they got. Now, there won't be markers here, at least not in time to help you to do the mechanics, so you just need to remember what you had and make sure that you go to the correct position. If you have a stack or a donut, stack in the middle. If you have a spread or a flare, go all the way out at your spread position. As long as everybody goes to the right position, you should take heavy damage, but enough to survive, and you've done one of the hardest mechanics in the fight. Be prepared, healers, because next up is Telomania. This is going to hit with 4 light raid-wide attacks, followed by a very heavy hit that also inflicts a very heavy bleed on the party. Make sure that you're healing, mitigating. This is a great time to use things like Lilybell or Penheima. Now we get Endsong's Aporrhoia. For Endsong's Aporrhoia, the boss is going to spawn 6 heads around the arena in set positions. Then the boss is going to cast Endsong and shoot out 4 rings, which are going to slowly move towards 4 of the heads. You need to figure out where the heads are that are not getting a ring and move towards them as the other 4 are about to explode. There's a lot of time to adjust, so don't commit until you're certain you're in the right place. Afterwards, the heads will shoot rings at each other. Once again, find the heads that aren't getting a ring and dodge behind them. This happens one more time, and deal with it exactly the same way as before. Immediately afterwards, watch out for an Elenchos. Dodge the sides in this case, or the middle if we'd got in the other combo. There's a Telos Raid Wide Heal Up, and a Hubris Tank Buster on both tanks. And now we're going to get our final new mechanic. It starts with something familiar, an Elegeia Unforgotten. Deal with this exactly the same as before. Watch out for both the head, and make sure that you see if the planets require you go towards them for the knockback or away to dodge the AoE. There's an Aria healer stack at the end of this, so split into your light parties. And prepare for the big one. This is Double Fatalism. The boss is going to respawn 2 of the sets of planets previously. These will always be of the same type, and they will always be directly opposite each other. But before these go off, the boss will spawn the other set of planets as well. You're now going to have to deal with 4 planet explosions one after a time. Find the first one, and if it's blue, go towards it. You can feel safe knowing the next explosion will be directly opposite and the same type. Now watch carefully as one of the other planets is about to start spawning into the red style planet, meaning you need to get away from them. Whichever one spawns, get away from that one as quickly as you possibly can. The timing is fast. Afterwards, immediately run opposite because the other one will also be a red planet. Around this time, the boss casts Katasterismo one more time and spawns 8 towers. Deal with the planets first. There's plenty of time afterwards to adjust into your towers. Just like before, there's an Elenchos with these, so either dodge to the sides or to the middle while staying within your towers. If you've survived all of this, everything else from this point onwards is a repeated mechanic. There's Telemania. That's that same hard-hitting raid wide that will hit 4 times, followed by the one heavy hit with the bleed. You're then going to get another Twinsong's Aporrhoia. A Hubris Tank Buster. And an Endsong's Aporrhoia. Deal with these the exact same way as you did the previous time in the fight, and you'll be fine. Finally, if things weren't fun enough, you'll get one more of the Double Fatalism combo. If you survive all of these, all that's left is a Telos Raid Wide to heal with, and from this point onwards, focus on DPSing the boss. If the boss is still alive at this point in time, they will start to cast Fatalism. Even when this finishes, you've got a decent amount of time to try to finish the boss off before, when this finishes, this acts as the Enrage, the boss will turn untargetable and deal heavy damage, wiping the party. That's it. That's everything in this new fight. I hope you guys find this useful. Thanks for watching. As always, if you've got any questions, tips, comments, suggestions, let me know in the comment section. I'm sure plenty of you will be able to help me out with my pronunciations on these words. Sorry for having butchered the names of some of these casts. Anyways, thanks again for watching, guys. Take care.